Hare Krishna. Welcome back to the reading of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with me. We are reading right now Adi Lila, chapter 1. I'm going to continue the reading, but before that, once again, requesting those of you joining for the first time to please visit the playlist mentioned in the description section and start viewing this reading from the very beginning. Um, so, with this, I would like to continue the reading. Verse 53. Prior to the cosmic creation, only I exist, and no phenomena exist, either gross, subtle, or primordial. After creation, only I exist in everything, and after annihilation, only I remain eternally. Aham means I. Therefore, the speaker who is saying Aham, I, must have his own personality. The Mayavadi philosophers interpret this word aham as reflecting to the impersonal Brahman. These Mayavadis are very proud of their grammatical knowledge, but by any person who has actual knowledge of grammar can understand that aham means I and that I refers to a personality. Therefore, the personality of Godhead speaking to Brahma uses aham while describing his own transcendental form. Aham has a specific meaning. It is not a vague term that can be whimsically interpreted. Aham, when spoken by Krishna, refers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and nothing else. Before the creation and after its dissolution, only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his associates exist. There is no difference of the material elements. There is no existence of the material elements. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. Vasudeva va idam agra asin brahma na cha shankaraha. The meaning of this mantra is that before creation there was no existence of Brahma or Shiva, for only Vishnu existed. Vishnu exists in his abode, the Vaikuntha. There are innumerable Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky, and on each of them Vishnu resides with his associates and his paraphernalia. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that although the creation is periodically dissolved, there is another abode which is never dissolved. The word creation refers to the material creation because in the spiritual world everything exists eternally and there is no creation or dissolution. The Lord indicates herein that before the material creation, He existed in fullness with all transcendental opulences, including all strength, all wealth, all beauty, all knowledge, all fame, and all renunciation. If one thinks of a king, he automatically thinks of his secretaries, ministers, military commanders, palaces, and so on. Since a king has such opulences, one can simply try to imagine the opulence of the supreme personality of Godhead. When the Lord says, Aham, therefore, it is to be understood that he exists with full potency, including all opulences. The word Yat refers to Brahman, the impersonal effulgence of the Lord. In the Brahma Samhita 5.40, it is said, Tad Brahma Nishkalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam. The Brahman effulgence expands unlimitedly. Just as the sun is a localized planet, although the sunshine expands unlimitedly from that source, so the Absolute Truth is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but his effulgence of energy, Brahman, expands unlimitedly. From that Brahman energy, the creation appears, just as a cloud appears in sunshine. From the cloud comes rain, from the rain comes vegetation, and from the vegetation come fruits and flowers, which are the basis of subsistence for many other forms of life. Similarly, the effulgent bodily luster of the Supreme Lord is the cause of the creation of infinite universes. The Brahman effulgence is impersonal But the cause of that energy is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. From him, in his abode, the Vaikunthas, this Brahma Jyoti emanates. He is never impersonal. Since they cannot understand the source of the Brahman energy, impersonalists mistakenly choose to think this impersonal Brahman the ultimate or absolute goal. But as stated in the Upanishads, one has to penetrate the impersonal effulgence to see the face of the Supreme Lord. If one desires to reach the source of the sunshine, he has to travel through the sunshine to reach the sun and then meet the predominating deity there. The absolute truth is the Supreme Person, Bhagavan, as the Srimad Bhagavatam explains. Sat means effect, Asat means cause, and Param refers to the ultimate truth, which is transcendental to cause and effect. The cause of the creation is called the Mahat Tattva, or total material energy, and its effect is the creation itself. But neither cause nor effect existed in the beginning. They emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as did the energy of time. This is stated in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadi Asya Yataha. The source of birth of the cosmic manifestation or Mahat Tattva is the personality of Godhead. This is confirmed throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 8, the Lord says, Ahara, Ahara Sarvasya Prabhavaha. I am the fountainhead of all emanations. The material cosmos, being temporary, is sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest, but its energy emanates from the Supreme Absolute Lord. Before the creation, there was neither cause nor effect, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead existed with his full opulence and energy. The words Paschad Aham indicate that the Lord exists after the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. When the material world is dissolved, the Lord still exists personally in the Vaikunthas. During the creation, the Lord also exists as He is in the Vaikunthas, and He also exists as the super soul within the material universes. This is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita 5.37. Goloka eva nivasati. Although He is perfectly and eternally present in Goloka, Vrindavana in Vaikuntha, He is nevertheless all pervading Akhilamrita Bhutaha. The all pervading feature of the Lord is called the Super Soul. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Aham Kritsnasya Jagataha Prabhavaha. The cosmic manifestation is a display of the energy of the Supreme Lord. The material elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, display the inferior energy of the Lord, and the living entities are his superior energy. Since the energy of the Lord is non different from him, in fact, everything that exists is Krishna in his impersonal feature. Sunshine, sunlight, and heat are not different from the sun, and yet simultaneously they are distinct energies of the sun. Similarly, the cosmic manifestation and the living entities are energies of the Lord, and they are considered to be simultaneously one with and different from Him. The Lord therefore says, I am everything, because everything is His energy and is therefore non different from Him. यो अवशि avashishyeta so asmi aham indicates that the Lord is the balance that exists after the dissolution of the creation. The spiritual manifestation never vanishes. It belongs to the internal energy of the Supreme Lord and exists eternally. When the external manifestation is withdrawn, the spiritual activities in Goloka and the rest of the Vaikunthas continue unrestricted by material time, which has no existence in the spiritual world. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita it is said, Yad gatva na nivartante tad dhama paramam mama. The abode from which no one returns to this material world is the supreme abode of the Lord. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse 6. Verse 54. What appears to be truth without me is certainly my illusory energy, for nothing can exist without me. It is like a reflection of a real light in the shadows, for in the light there are neither shadows nor reflections. In the previous verse, the absolute truth and its nature has been explained. One must also understand the relative truth to actually know the absolute. The relative truth, which is called Maya or material nature, is explained here. Maya has no independent existence. One who is less intelligent is captivated by the wonderful activities of Maya, but he does not understand that behind these activities is the direction of the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sa characharam. The material nature is working and producing moving and non moving beings only by the supervision of Krishna. This is from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 10. The real nature of Maya, the illusory existence of the material manifestation, is clearly explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. The absolute truth is substance, and the relative truth depends upon its relationship with the absolute for its existence. Maya means energy. Therefore, the relative truth is explained to be the energy of the absolute truth. Since it is difficult to understand the distinction between the absolute and relative truths, an example can be given for clarification. The absolute truth can be compared to the sun, which is appreciated in terms of two relative truths, reflection and darkness. Darkness is the absence of sunshine, and a reflection is a projection of sunlight into darkness. Neither darkness nor reflection has an independent existence. Darkness comes when the sunshine is blocked. For example, if one stands facing the sun, his back will be in darkness. Since darkness stands in the absence of the sun, it is therefore relative to the sun. The spiritual world is compared to the real sunshine, and the material world is compared to the dark regions where the sun is not visible. When the material manifestation appears very wonderful, this is due to a perverted reflection of the supreme sunshine, the absolute truth, as confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra. Whatever one can see here has its substance in the absolute. As darkness is situated far away from the sun, so the material world is also far away from the spiritual world. The Vedic literature directs us not to be captivated by the dark regions or tamaha, but to try to reach the shining regions of the absolute or yogi dhamma. The spiritual world is brightly illuminated, but the material world is wrapped in darkness. In the material world, sunshine, moonshine, or different kinds of artificial light are required to dispel darkness, especially at night, for by nature the material world is dark. Therefore, the Supreme Lord has arranged for sunshine and moonshine. But in his abode, as described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, verse 6, there is no necessity for lighting by sunshine, moonshine, or electricity because everything is self effulgent. That which is relative, temporary, and far away from the absolute truth is called Maya or ignorance. This illusion is exhibited in two ways, as explained in Bhagavad Gita. The inferior illusion is inert matter, and the superior illusion is the living entity. The living entities are called illusory in this context only because they are implicated in the illusory structures and activities of the material world. Actually, the living entities are not illusory, for they are parts of the superior energy of the Supreme Lord and do not have to be covered by Maya if they do not want to be so. The actions of the living entities in the spiritual kingdom are not illusory. They are the actual eternal activities of liberated souls. Verse 55. As the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creation and yet am not within them. The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combine with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world. And yet, they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in varied proportions. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. Without his presence within the material world, the cosmic body could not develop. Just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma or the Super Soul. The personality of Godhead, in his all pervading feature of Paramatma, enters every entity from the biggest to the most minute. His existence can be realized by one who has the single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is the cause of proportionate spiritual realization, by which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face. Because of his development of transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, a surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and all his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple, Sri Radha and Krishna, sitting on a decorated throne beneath a desire tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavana. His nose is engaged in smelling the spiritual aroma of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing messages from Vaikuntha, and his hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his associates. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of the devotional relationship in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. To achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being. Verse 56. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to know the all pervading truth. Those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore, a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who, by pious activities, reaches the plane of heaven or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman, and this Brahmananda, the spiritual bliss derived from the impersonal Brahman, is like the water in the hoof print of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. When one develops pure love for the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection. One should try to purchase a ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, which is not easily awakened even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives. All mundane relationships are sure to be broken in the course of time, but once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken even after the annihilation of the material world. One should understand through the transparent medium of the spiritual master that the Supreme Lord exists everywhere in his transcendental spiritual nature, and that the living entity's relationship with the Lord are directly and indirectly existing everywhere, even in this material world. In the spiritual world, there are five kinds of relationships with the Supreme Lord: Shanta, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The perverted reflections of these rasas are found in the material world. Land, home, furniture, and other inert material objects are related in Shanta or the neutral and silent sense, whereas servants work in the Dasya relationship. The reciprocation between friends is called Sakhya. The affection of a parent for a child is known as Vatsalya, and the affairs of conjugal love constitute Madhurya. These five relationships in the material world are distorted reflections of the original pure sentiments, which should be understood and perfected in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. In the material world, the perverted rasas bring frustration. If these rasas are re-established with Lord Krishna, the result is eternal, blissful life. From this and the preceding three verses of Chaitanya Charitamrita, which have been selected from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the missionary activities of Lord Chaitanya can be understood. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, which are summarized in the four verses beginning with Evasam Evagre 53 and concluding with Yat Syat Sarvatra Sarvadi 56. In the first of these verses, verse 53, the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. The second verse 54 further explains that the Lord is detached from the workings of the material energy, Maya. The living entities, as parts and parcels of Lord Krishna, are prone to be controlled by the external energy because although they are spiritual, in the material world they are encased in bodies of material energy. The eternal relationship of the living entities with the Supreme Lord is explained in that verse. The next verse 55 instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by His inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material energy. This knowledge is called Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to Lord Krishna, he can then develop natural transcendental love for the Supreme Lord. This surrendering process should be the primary concern of a human being. In the next verse, 56, it is said that a conditioned soul must ultimately approach a bona fide spiritual master and try to understand perfectly the material and spiritual worlds and his own existential position. Here, the words Anvaya Vyatirekhabhyam, directly and indirectly, suggests that one must learn the process of devotional service in its two aspects. One must directly execute the process of devotional service and indirectly avoid the impediments to progress. Verse 57. All glories to Chintamani and my initiating spiritual master, Somagiri. All glories to my instructing spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who wears peacock feathers in his crown under the shade of his lotus feet, which are like desire trees. Jayashri or Radharani enjoys the transcendental mellow of an eternal consort. This verse is from the Krishna Karanamrita, which was written by a great Vaishnava sannyasi named Bilva Mangala Thakura, who is also known as Lila Sukha. He intensely desired to enter into the eternal pastimes of the Lord, and he lived at Vrindavana for 700 years in the vicinity of Brahmakunda, a still existing bathing tank in Vrindavana. The history of Bilvamangala Thakura is given in a book called Sri Vallabha Digvijaya. He appeared in the 8th century Shaka era in the province of Dravida and was the chief disciple of Vishnu Swami. In a list of temples and monasteries kept in Shankaracharya's monastery in Dwarka, Bilvamangala is mentioned as the founder of the Dwarkadhisha temple there. He entrusted the service of his deity to Hari Brahmachari, a disciple of Vallabha Bhatta. Bilvamangala Thakura actually entered into the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. He has recorded his transcendental experiences and appreciation in the book known as Karanamrita. In the beginning of that book, he has offered his obeisances to his different gurus, and it is to be noted that he has adored them all equally. The first spiritual master mentioned is Chintamani, who was his instructing spiritual master because she first showed him the spiritual path. Chintamani was a prostitute with whom Bilvamangala was intimate earlier in his life. She gave him the inspiration to begin on the path of devotional service, and because she convinced him to give up material existence to try for perfection by loving Krishna, he has first offered his respects to her. Next, he offers his respects to his initiating spiritual master, Somagiri, and then to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was also his instructing spiritual master. He explicitly mentions Bhagavan, who has peacock feathers on his crown, because the Lord of Vrindavana, Krishna the covered boy, used to come to Bilvamangala to talk with him and supply him with milk. In his adoration of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, he describes that Jayashri, the goddess of fortune, Srimati Radharani, takes shelter in the shade of his lotus feet to enjoy the transcendental rasa of nuptial love. The complete treatise Krishna Karanamrita is dedicated to the transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. It is a book to be read and understood by the most elevated devotees of Sri Krishna. Verse 58. Since one cannot visually experience the presence of the Supersoul, he appears before us as a liberated devotee. Such a spiritual master is no one other than Krishna himself. It is not possible for a conditioned soul to directly meet Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one becomes a sincere devotee and seriously engages in devotional service, Lord Krishna sends an instructing spiritual master to show him favor and invoke his dormant propensity for serving the Supreme. The perceptor appears before the external senses of the fortunate conditioned soul, and at the same time, the devotee is guided from within by the Chaitya Guru, Krishna, who is seated as the spiritual master within the heart of the living entity. Verse 59. One should therefore avoid bad company and associate only with devotees. With their realized instructions, such saints can cut the knot connecting one with activities unfavorable to devotional service. This verse, which appears in the Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, chapter 26, verse 26, was spoken by Lord Krishna to Uddhava in the text known as the Uddhava Gita. The discussion relates to the story of Puruvara and the heavenly courtesan Urvashi. When Urvashi left Puruvara, he was deeply affected by the separation and had to learn to overcome his grief. It is indicated that to learn the transcendental science, it is imperative that one avoid the company of undesirable persons and always seek the company of saints and sages who are able to impart lessons of transcendental knowledge. The potent words of such realized souls penetrate the heart, thereby eradicating all misgivings accumulated by years of undesirable association. For a neophyte devotee, there are two kinds of persons whose association is undesirable. Number one, gross materialists who constantly engage in sense gratification. And number two, unbelievers who do not serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead but serve their senses and their mental whims in terms of their speculative habits. Intelligent persons seeking transcendental realization should very scrupulously avoid their company. So, with this, friends, I will conclude the reading for today. Um, I wish you a very safe and happy day ahead. Thank you and see you again very soon. Hare Krishna.